for honoring my uncle
And my mother.
And my father.
and we are just humbled with the inductees being put in today. A couple teachers got inducted. So one of the things I always liked to do at school was I enjoyed show and tell. So how about we do a little bit of show and tell to see why Pat and Lee Robbins earned legendary status. Because a legend, even though both of them have passed on, have touched this community and touched many lives right here. Jersey's best, Robbins Brothers Oysters. Lee came into the business and grew it. At the height, they employed over 150 employees. He got together with this crazy guy named Wild Bill Riggin, and they came up with Riggins and Robbins. Later, it was only sold to a Fortune 500 company called General Mills. Now, did Lee want to come into the business?
No, he did not like the oyster business. He didn't like going up the bay. He didn't like anything about it. But my grandfather got sick, our grandfather got sick, and he had to take care. Somebody had to run the business. So that's what happened.
And he grew up on Church Street, attended Port Norris Baptist Church. He learned the 10 Commandments, to honor your father and mother. So even though Lee wanted to be a lawyer, his aspirations were put aside so he can go ahead and run the family business. He didn't do it grudgingly, he took it to the top. And that's what a legend does. Reach into the goodie bag and you see a piece of jewelry. While still running the oyster business, his wife really loved Southwestern jewelry. Sterling silver, turquoise. So Lee opens up a shop. Called it Lola's Place.
And that's because whatever Lola wants, Lola gets.
And my aunt's name was Pat, and he didn't like it, so he called her Lola. And that's what it was. And I look over the table there, and Bob and Danielle Carroll, one of the nice stories they said is Uncle Lee used to drive around his little gator as he was farming, and their daughter and niece would be out there playing. He says, hop on in. So he'd take them to the jewelry shop, and they got to play Pretty Pretty Princess with real jewels. I talked to my sister, who's sitting over there, Suzanne, and my cousin, which was Lee's granddaughter, Pam. He used to pay them to polish the jewelry, and they got to play Pretty Pretty Princess. So it went from one generation to the other, and it was something they could do together. Here we have a little banjo. At age 50, Lee wanted to say, what more can I do with Pat? So he decided I got to take banjo lessons. Where'd he go?
He found a guy over in Wilmington, Delaware, and he went over there once a month, twice a month, and Al Smith taught him how to play banjo. And then they decided that they would make a string band. Brown Street Chowder Society.
Because you see, with Lee, he wanted to spend more time with Pat. Now, Pat was just an unbelievable pianist. But they wanted to include the community. Like some names of Bill Horseman.
I can't read, I don't have my glasses.
Who was the one that played piano so your mom shifted?
There was a Fanny Cow, I think her name was. She wanted to participate in the Brown Street Chowder Society, So she came to my mother, who was the pianist, and she said, I would really like to participate, but I only can play a piano. Mother goes, no problem. And so she took up the bass fiddle. And so when she played that and we sang, Mammy sang bass, she really did play the bass.
And they performed in Greenwich at the Crab Shack locally. As you can see, they came out with their own record, and there's a copy of the CD back there. And if you go to YouTube, put in the Brown Street Shouters Society, you may even find something. I found something they did at an event for Morristown, and it was really neat. But you go in the jewelry shop, and a lot of times Uncle Lee would be picking and grinning, and they'd have a jam session going on too. So it was really neat. And speaking of music, we found this.
My mother went to Wheaton College, and she was a music major. And during her stay there, her time there, Billy Graham also went to Wheaton College. And he started his ministries out there. And when his regular pianist couldn't come, Mom was always the substitute pianist for the Billy Graham ministries. And she learned to love the Lord. She grew up in the church. And in 1953, she wrote and published a hymn called His Love. And she wrote several, but this is the one that actually got published.
So Pat got to hang out with Billy Graham. That's not going to outdo Lee. How to Listen to God by Charles Stanley. When he passed, we were asked to help clean out the house. To Lee, my friend, Charles Stanley. You see, they like to watch him on TV. So they took a trip down to Atlanta, waited till after the service was done and said, hey preacher, I'd like to meet you. You want to go fishing? Charles Stanley said, sure.
And we had to sneak him into Port Norris so Dad could take him out to the Delaware Bay. And he spent the night at my parents' house. And I got even invited for supper.
So the Lord strengthened their marriage. They looked out to do things for each other and just had a great time together. When my grandfather died, I went through the house and I found a Buck Rogers atomic pistol. And I put this in here for a reason. Why is that?
When he was guarding his oysters down at the oyster house, my dad used to go down packing guns. And sometimes he would get to shooting. Really annoyed my mother, and she started calling him Wyatt Earp.
So yeah, Wyatt Earp. It was always funny. I always asked Dad, why do you have the alarm on silence? He'd just grin and go running out the door. And him and Uncle Lee made sure that no one was stealing any oysters. And they really didn't have any problems with that.
Everybody knew he was down there with guns.
And this is one of Carolyn's favorite pictures with her and her mom.
And we were on a trip to Alaska. We were on a cruise. And they got this shot as they were practicing with the, what do you call them, the life preservers. And what makes it so favorite is that she said, friends are God's life preservers. And this was her.
And that's how we like to leave it. You know, Port Norris, friends are like life preservers. And many of us go away. We don't think we're ever going to come back. I served in the Navy too and was out and about. But Port Norris is home.
I want to tell one more story.
She wants one more story. She always got to get the last word.
I'm the oldest. When I was a teenager, Robert Goulet was in his heyday. And my mother loved Robert Goulet. And he was at the Latin Casino. And she came home one day and she said, Leon, you've got to take me to the Latin Casino and you've got to do whatever it is that you do with the maitre d' because I want to sit in a particular seat because he comes off the stage and sings to the ladies. And she says, I want him to sing to me and hold my hand. So we go to the Latin Casino, sit right where she wants. I even got invited. And so he comes around and he's singing to everybody. He gets to us and he walks right by her and he grabs my hand and starts singing me a song, and then he kissed me. Pat didn't talk to me for 3 days.
And that's our story, and we're sticking to it.